Ronaldinho's greatest tragedy is that the world only wants to remember his smile. We remember his incredible dribbling, his joyful samba rhythm, and the genius that made football the happiest sport on earth. What we rarely see is the silent burden hidden behind that smile, a childhood wound that no amount of applause can truly heal. At the height of his career, he earned over $50 million a year, hailed as one of the richest and most admired athletes on the planet. But less than a decade later, much of that fortune had vanished, and the man once adored by millions found himself living in a reality few fans could have imagined. The very icon who had received praise even from his fiercest rivals was later photographed handcuffed in one of the darkest chapters of his life in Paraguay. Today, as age gradually replaces the brilliance of youth, one question still resonates throughout. How could a man who brought so much happiness to the world lose control of the life he so painstakingly built? This is the story of extraordinary rise, painful fall, and the untold truth behind the legend the world thought it knew. Before we explore the real man behind this miracle, remember to subscribe to the channel and like Ronaldinho's video. Long before the world called him Ronaldinho, he was simply Ronaldo de Assis Moreira, a little boy born on March 21, 1980, in Porto Alegre, the capital of Brazil's southern state of Rio Grande do Sul. His first memories were not shaped by stadium lights or roaring crowds, but by the narrow streets of one of the city's poorest neighborhoods, where survival often mattered more than dreams. The family lived in a modest wooden house inside a crowded favela, where every day carried uncertainty. His father, João de Assis Moreira, had once played professional football before earning a living as a shipyard welder, while his mother, Miguelina Eloy Assis dos Santos, sold cosmetics before later becoming a nurse. Football filled every corner of the house, but it was never simply a game. It was the family's only believable escape from poverty. Their greatest hope rested on Ronaldinho's older brother, Roberto Assis, whose professional career promised a future none of them had ever known. For a brief time, that dream seemed real. After Roberto signed with Grêmio, the club rewarded the family with a better home in the Guarujá district of Porto Alegre, convincing him to remain with the team. Then, in 1988, everything collapsed in a single afternoon. Returning home to celebrate both his 18th birthday and his parents' wedding anniversary, Roberto instead found his father lifeless after suffering a fatal heart attack while swimming in the family pool. Ronaldinho was only 8 years old. The man who first placed a football at his feet was suddenly gone forever. Years later, Ronaldinho would still describe his father as one of the most important influences on both his life and career, despite losing him so young. Roberto, only 17 himself, quietly abandoned much of his own ambition to become the father his little brother no longer had. That sacrifice became the invisible foundation of one of football's greatest stories. Ronaldinho carried his grief onto every dusty pitch he could find, practicing on uneven fields where grass existed only around the edges while the center was nothing but hard sand. Futsal sharpened his touch, forcing him to master impossible control in impossibly small spaces. Then, at just 13 years old, he stunned Brazil by scoring all 23 goals in an astonishing 23-0 victory. To the world, it looked like the birth of a miracle. To Ronaldinho, it was something far more personal. Every goal was another step away from the pain that had entered his home the day his father never came back. In 1998, at just 17 years old, Ronaldinho stepped onto the field for Grêmio, the very club where his brother Roberto's dreams had once begun before life forced them to an early end. It should have been a moment of pure triumph, yet every touch of the ball carried the weight of a family sacrifice that had made his career possible. 2 years later, in 2001, he left Brazil for Paris Saint-Germain, trading the dusty streets of Porto Alegre for the bright lights of France. His extraordinary talent quickly established him as one of Ligue 1's most electrifying players, but for the first time, another story began following him. The headlines no longer focused only on his brilliance, but on his growing love of Paris nightlife and an uneasy relationship with head coach Luis Fernandes. Even then, nothing could overshadow the magic in his feet. In 2002, alongside Ronaldo and Rivaldo, he helped lead Brazil to its 5th FIFA World Cup title. His unforgettable 30-yard free kick over David Seaman against England transformed him from a gifted youngster into a global phenomenon overnight, earning him a place in the tournament's all-star team. Europe suddenly wanted the smiling Brazilian who played as though pressure did not exist. Manchester United believed they had won the race after losing David Beckham to Real Madrid. But on July 19, 2003, everything changed. Barcelona secured his signature for €27 million. It looked like the beginning of football's most beautiful fairy tale. In reality, it was also the first step toward a life where unimaginable glory would eventually demand an unimaginable price. Every football generation produces extraordinary players, but only a handful create moments that become part of history itself. For Ronaldinho, that transformation began in the summer of 2003 when he walked onto the Camp Nou pitch, wearing Barcelona's colors for the first time. His debut came in a friendly against Juventus, and even after a single performance, head coach Frank Rijkaard recognized what the rest of the world was about to discover. "Every time he touches the ball, something special happens," he said. Barcelona desperately needed that kind of miracle. The club had not lifted a major trophy since 1999 and had spent years living in the shadow of Real Madrid's Galacticos. The supporters were no longer searching for another superstar. They were searching for hope. Ronaldinho gave them far more than that. He restored joy to a club that had forgotten how to smile. During the 2004-05 season, he inspired Barcelona to their first La Liga title in 6 years, earning both the FIFA World Player of the Year award and, a year later, the 2005 Ballon d'Or. The following season, he led Barcelona to another La Liga crown and the 2005-06 UEFA Champions League, completing the first European double of his career. Then came November 19, 2005, a night that seemed almost impossible. After scoring 2 breathtaking solo goals in El Clásico, the Santiago Bernabéu fell silent before more than 80,000 Real Madrid supporters rose together to applaud him. Since Diego Maradona in 1983, no Barcelona player had received such respect from the club's fiercest rivals. It was the highest honor football could offer. Yet hidden beneath those standing ovations was a truth no one wanted to see. The higher Ronaldinho climbed, the lonelier the fall waiting below would become. By 2006, there was nothing left for Ronaldinho to conquer. At just 26 years old, he had become football's brightest star and the highest-paid player in the sport, earning an extraordinary $57 million in a single year through salary and commercial partnerships. More than $19 million came from endorsements alone as global giants, including Nike, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, eSports, and Danone competed to place his unforgettable smile at the center of their campaigns. He wasn't simply selling football. He had become its happiest face. Children from São Paulo to Tokyo copied his elastic dribbles, his no-look passes, and the grin that convinced the world life could be played with joy instead of fear. At Barcelona, he did more than revive a fallen giant. He inspired an entire generation, including a quiet teenage academy player named Lionel Messi, who watched every training session believing he was witnessing football in its purest form. Yet hidden beneath the applause was a wound far older than fame. The little boy who lost his father at just 8 years old had never truly escaped that moment. Many, including respected South American journalist Tim Vickery, have suggested that João's sudden death shaped Ronaldinho's philosophy forever. Life could disappear without warning, so why not enjoy every moment before it vanished? It sounded beautiful. In time, it became dangerous. What began as a celebration slowly turned into an escape. The parties grew longer, the nights became brighter, and the mornings on the training ground became harder to face. During his first 3 seasons at Barcelona, Ronaldinho had been a dedicated professional whose brilliance was matched by relentless preparation. But after reaching the summit, discipline gradually surrendered to indulgence. The same man who once floated effortlessly past defenders began carrying extra weight, his explosive acceleration fading almost unnoticed. The decline was not dramatic. It was painfully gradual, like watching a masterpiece lose its color one brushstroke at a time. On May 19, 2008, Barcelona president Joan Laporta publicly declared that Ronaldinho needed a new challenge to revive his career. Behind those diplomatic words lay a painful truth. The club he had rescued no longer believed he could save himself. When Pep Guardiola took charge that summer, one of his first decisions was to let Ronaldinho leave. Guardiola never questioned his greatness. He feared the carefree lifestyle surrounding him had become incompatible with the disciplined culture Barcelona needed to build. Even Carlo Ancelotti, who welcomed Ronaldinho to AC Milan later that year, admitted he was not surprised by the decline. For those who looked closely, the tragedy had never been about football. Ronaldinho had conquered every opponent on the pitch, but the grief and emptiness he carried since childhood had become the only rival his extraordinary talent could never quite outrun. The fall did not arrive with a single mistake. It unfolded quietly, almost invisibly, while the world was still applauding the memories of the player Ronaldinho used to be. After Barcelona finished behind Real Madrid in the 2006-07 La Liga season, the first cracks became impossible to ignore. Injuries during 2007-08 robbed him of rhythm, but those inside the club believed the deeper problem was no longer physical. The relentless discipline that had carried him to the summit had gradually been replaced by distractions that football could no longer hide. When he left Barcelona in July 2008, it was not the farewell of a conquering hero. It was the painful departure of a man who had once made an entire city believe in magic, only to discover that even magic disappears when it is no longer protected. His move to AC Milan offered hope that one of football's brightest lights might shine again. There were unforgettable moments when the old Ronaldinho suddenly returned. Defenders froze, crowds gasped, and the impossible once again seemed ordinary. But those moments became increasingly rare. They arrived like echoes from another lifetime rather than signs of a genuine revival. By the 2010-11 season, he managed only one goal in 16 appearances, a statistic almost unimaginable for the man who had once terrified every defense in Europe. The decline that had begun in Barcelona was now impossible to deny. Leaving Milan did not stop the descent. It merely changed its scenery. Ronaldinho returned to Brazil with Flamengo in 2011, hoping to rebuild both his career and his happiness. Instead, financial chaos inside the club led to unpaid wages, forcing him to terminate his contract and become a free agent. The contrast was staggering. The player who had once earned around £100,000 a week found himself accepting contracts worth roughly £24,000, and even those salaries often failed to arrive. Football, which had once promised security, could no longer provide stability. There was one final reminder of the champion he had been. Joining Atletico Mineiro in 2012, Ronaldinho rediscovered enough brilliance to help the club win the 2013 Copa Libertadores, the first in its history. For a brief moment, the smile returned. Supporters dared to believe the story might still have a happy ending. But time no longer moved in his favor. Short spells with Querétaro in Mexico and Fluminense followed before his final professional appearance in 2015. Without any formal farewell, one of football's greatest artists quietly disappeared from the game he had once illuminated. Retirement should have offered peace. Instead, it exposed everything football had been protecting him from. Throughout the final years of his career, the income had fallen dramatically, yet the lifestyle remained almost untouched. Luxury cars, extravagant parties, sprawling homes, constant travel, and a large entourage continued consuming money at a pace that no declining salary could sustain. His collection included a Bugatti Veyron, Ferrari 458, Lamborghini Aventador, Porsche Carrera S, Mercedes-Benz E-Class, and Hummer H2, while properties stretched across Brazil, Spain, Greece, Florida, and Lake Como. In 2015, his estimated net worth still stood between $80 million and $100 million. From a distance, everything looked untouched. Beneath the surface, the foundation was already collapsing. Searching for new purpose, Ronaldinho invested in one business after another. He launched the R10 esports organization in 2019, introduced his R1 organic gin, became involved with the wine label Vino de Campeones, and even ventured into music. Each project generated headlines, but few produced lasting financial success. The applause that had once followed everything he touched could no longer guarantee prosperity. Then came the legal battles that transformed financial problems into public humiliation. In February 2015, Ronaldinho and his brother Roberto Assis were convicted over the unauthorized construction of a sugar mill, fishing platform, and pier inside a protected environmental area on Lake Guaíba. They were ordered to pay 8.5 million Brazilian reais in fines. Years later, investigators examining Ronaldinho's bank accounts discovered something almost impossible to believe. The balance contained only 24.63 Brazilian reais, the equivalent of roughly £5. It was one of the most haunting images of his entire life. The man who had earned $57 million in 2006, won the World Cup, the Ballon d'Or, the UEFA Champions League, and 2 FIFA World Player of the Year awards officially possessed less money than many children carried to school. The consequences grew harsher. Authorities seized his passports, while in 2018 prosecutors raided his home, confiscating luxury vehicles, including 2 BMWs and a Mercedes-Benz, along with valuable artwork by Brazilian painter André Berardo. By July 2019, 57 properties connected to Ronaldinho had been frozen as unpaid taxes, and environmental penalties continued mounting. Additional creditors pursued approximately 1.69 million reais in outstanding debts, including unpaid municipal taxes. Every new headline pushed him further away from the smiling icon the world thought it knew. His private life reflected the same instability. In 2018, sensational reports claimed he planned to marry 2 women, Beatriz Souza and Priscila Coelho, at the same ceremony inside his luxury Rio de Janeiro mansion, despite bigamy being illegal in Brazil. Ronaldinho firmly denied the story, but the damage had already been done. Once celebrated for dazzling defenders, he now found himself defending his own reputation. The deepest tragedy was not that Ronaldinho lost his fortune. It was that he slowly lost the structure that had kept his life together. Football had always given him direction, teammates, coaches, routines, responsibilities, and a reason to wake each morning. When those disappeared, the little boy who had spent his entire life trying to outrun the pain of losing his father suddenly found himself standing alone again. And this time, there was no football left to carry him away from it. In March 2020, as the world closed its borders against a global pandemic, Ronaldinho found himself walking toward a prison instead of a football stadium. It was a scene no one could have imagined for the man who had once symbolized freedom on the pitch. Arriving in Paraguay alongside his brother Roberto Assis for a charity event and the promotion of his book, Ronaldinho was arrested on March 6th after authorities discovered they had entered the country carrying forged Paraguayan passports. The case baffled the public from the very beginning. Brazilian citizens did not even need passports to enter Paraguay, making the mystery even more painful. His genuine Brazilian passport had already been confiscated because of legal disputes back home, but why fake documents had been obtained, who supplied them, and why they were used remain questions that have never been fully answered. Ronaldinho spent the next 32 days inside Tacumbu National Penitentiary, one of Paraguay's most overcrowded prisons, before being released on April 8, 2020, after lawyers posted $1.6 million in bail. Behind those concrete walls, the contrast was heartbreaking. The man once applauded by 80,000 Real Madrid supporters at the Santiago Bernabeu now organized football matches in a prison yard and signed autographs for fellow inmates instead of young fans. Even more painful, he celebrated his 40th birthday inside a jail cell. Reflecting on that chapter, Ronaldinho admitted, "It was a hard blow. I never imagined I would go through such a situation. All my life I sought to reach the highest professional level and bring joy to people with my football." Friends later described him as deeply shaken. Although transferred to house arrest at the Palmaroga Hotel in Asunción after leaving prison, he remained unable to leave Paraguay for months while the legal process continued. For perhaps the first time in his life, the smile that had captivated the world could no longer hide the sorrow behind it. In August 2020, a Paraguayan judge approved a plea agreement that finally ended the legal case. 5 long months had disappeared into courtrooms, prison walls, and house arrest over passports Ronaldinho insisted he never knew were counterfeit. The punishment eventually ended, but the scars remained. Freedom returned, yet the life he had once known never fully did. As he approaches his 47th birthday in 2027, Ronaldinho's story is no longer one of collapse, but of quiet rebuilding. Financially, he has recovered. His legal obligations in Brazil have been resolved, and his estimated net worth has climbed back to around 63 million euros, fueled largely by endorsement deals and a digital audience of more than 100 million followers across Instagram, TikTok, and X. The same smile that once sold football boots now promotes brands to a new generation. In 2026, he returned to football's biggest stage as part of TV Globo's World Cup broadcasting team, no longer dazzling defenders, but reflecting on the game that once belonged to him. Away from the cameras, another chapter has begun. His son, Joe Mendes, has continued the family tradition, developing through Burnley's academy before becoming associated with Hull City's reserve setup. After Joe welcomed a daughter following news of the pregnancy in 2024, Ronaldinho embraced an entirely new role, grandfather. Yet none of those milestones erase the quiet sadness surrounding his legacy. It is not because he is poor, he is not. It is not because he remains imprisoned, he is free. It is because football has rarely witnessed a talent so extraordinary burn so brilliantly for such a short time. Ronaldinho was, for a breathtaking few years, the greatest player on earth, the smiling genius who made impossible football seem effortless. He collected 2 FIFA World Player of the Year awards, the 2005 Ballon d'Or, the 2002 FIFA World Cup, the 2005 FIFA Confederations Cup, the 1999 Copa America, the UEFA Champions League, and the 2013 Copa Libertadores, remaining the only player in history to win all of those major honors. Most legends spend a decade ruling the game. Ronaldinho gave the world only a handful of unforgettable years before discipline slowly surrendered to excess and brilliance faded into regret. His life drifted from magical nights at Camp Nou to failed investments, environmental fines, forged passports, and a prison cell that no one believed could ever hold football's happiest man. Perhaps that is why the upcoming biographical series, Epic Rye 10 Inches, describes him not merely as a sporting icon, but as a dramatic hero whose life was shaped as much by conflict as by triumph. Ronaldinho conquered football, but the hardest match he ever played was against the emptiness that followed when the cheers finally grew quiet. Perhaps that is why Ronaldinho's story continues to resonate long after the final whistle. It was never simply the story of a footballer who won trophies. It was the story of a little boy from Porto Alegre who lost his father at 8 years old, discovered that a football could silence grief, and for a brief, unforgettable moment made an entire world believe happiness could be as simple as a smile. Very few athletes have ever changed the way their sport was played. Ronaldinho changed the way it was felt. He reminded millions that football could be playful without losing its greatness, artistic without sacrificing its competitiveness, and joyful even under unimaginable pressure. Yet the same heart that made him so irresistible on the pitch also made him vulnerable away from it. He lived with an intensity that rarely paused to consider tomorrow. Every triumph was celebrated as though it might be the last, because, in many ways, that was how life had taught him to think. The child who learned that everything precious could disappear without warning never completely escaped that lesson. Looking back, it becomes easier to understand that his greatest opponent was never a defender, a rival club, or another superstar. It was the emptiness that followed every victory and the silence that arrived after the applause faded. Today, Ronaldinho no longer carries the burden of proving himself. He appears at charity events, inspires young footballers, supports his son's journey through the game, and continues to bring smiles wherever he goes. Millions still stop to take photographs with him, not because they remember statistics, but because they remember how he made them feel. There are players who scored more goals, won more titles, or enjoyed longer careers. There may never be another who played with quite the same freedom. That gift alone secured his place among football's immortals. Perhaps that is also the real tragedy. Ronaldinho did not fail because he lacked ability. He possessed more natural talent than almost anyone who has ever stepped onto a football field. His tragedy was that such extraordinary brilliance lasted Only a few breathtaking years before life slowly pulled him away from the summit, he seemed destined to rule for a decade. But maybe greatness should not always be measured by how long it lasts. Sometimes it is measured by how impossible it is to forget. When children still imitate the no-look pass, the elastic dribble, or that unmistakable smile, they are keeping a small part of Ronaldinho alive. His legacy is no longer defined by prison walls, financial mistakes, or missed opportunities. It lives in every player who dares to choose imagination over fear and joy over caution. The magic never truly disappeared. It simply became a memory carried by everyone fortunate enough to witness it. What do you think Ronaldinho's greatest legacy really is? Was he the most naturally gifted footballer the game has ever seen? Or do you believe his story is ultimately one of unrealized potential? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this journey moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more untold stories behind the legends who changed the world forever.